Real Talk is designed to create space for honest conversations about the challenges facing nursing education. The views shared in this episode are those of the speakers and participants and do not necessarily represent the official position of OADN.
Hey friends, it's Nicole and Sherry, and we are back with Real Talk again. And we have friends here with us today that we are so excited to have. Sherry, you want to say good morning?
I can say good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I just got back from a cruise, so I really don't know what day or time it is. But I do know it's Real Talk, and that's time for Real Talk. So I'm excited to be here too. We were talking a little bit earlier today about approaching today with a lens of reflection. At the end of a calendar year, we always reflect on our progress that we've made, or maybe the places that we haven't quite progressed as much as we wanted to. And at the end of an academic year, we do the same thing. So this is a perfect time for us to reflect. I think I would say, and I hope everybody would agree with me, that this Real Talk has been so valuable. Even if we're leading, and I don't feel like we're really leading, I feel like we're just kind of aggregating information. The interaction comes from the people that listen and talk while we record, and also while we listen and then have some sessions afterwards and unpack some of the concerns that are there. So we thought we would use this as a similar type of thing to reflect on where we've been, what we've been talking about. And as people that have listened to this know, we've been talking a lot about incivility. And I feel very badly that we have to talk about that, but it is a topic that nurse educators everywhere need to be able to talk openly about, because there's not one of us that doesn't deal with this on a daily basis. Even if we're not the person in the midst of it, we are proxy to that. And if we are not able to acknowledge that, we may be the problem. So I think it's really important that we open our eyes and look at that. And so today we thought we would take a lot of the conversation that has taken place both in the recordings, in the listening sessions, and then also within the registrations where people can ask questions or put, "I'd really love to talk about this. Can you address this?" Because you and I, Nicole, our favorite thing is to give tangible takeaways that people can use and put into practice. We can't solve everything, none of us can, but we can brainstorm and try to give some directions. So you want to start us off there, Nicole?
Sure. Yeah. So what like she was talking about, it's really important that this real talk stays real. And that comes from you all and what you need to address. And we get questions. The benefit of the registration is you guys take time and you put information in to let us know things that are really causing issues within your department or within your environment, within your area of the country. And I feel like, Sherry, we have worked with the group as a whole, and we've addressed a lot of these things as we've gone along. But there's still some of these threads that are popping up on, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I handle students not taking feedback? Or not taking feedback well, not understanding that feedback is a part of growth. How do we do that? And so we talked a lot about giving feedback to, trying to interact faculty to faculty when there were issues and trying to interact with students when there were issues. But this is in the case of maybe there isn't even an issue. It's just the student doesn't understand how to receive feedback. And so I thought that might be a good thing to talk about to address that question specifically. And one of the things that I really try hard to do and that I encourage faculty to do is really looking at working with faculty on verbiage even before feedback is needed. Because a lot of times I think students become really more defensive when they feel like feedback is rooted in what you want. It becomes a subjective thing versus it being something that is objective. And it's really not what Nicole wants or Sherry wants or Claudia wants. It's what the course itself requires. And so that all comes back to verbiage that shows up in your syllabus. It shows up in how your course is designed and even just in your day-to-day interactions with students. We don't mean it the way it comes across when we say, okay, I want to see you all on target and ready to go. It's not about what I want to see. Okay, today the course requires XYZ, and the expectations in the program are XYZ. And that immediately takes that idea of subjectivity out of it. So, maybe some other thoughts about that on how to get students to receive feedback, even when there's not conflict in place. Just how do I take feedback and how do I do that?
Nicole, I want to capitalize on that. And then I would love for Claudia and Drew and Daniel to give us a little bit of thoughts too about how they have seen that in play as well, because I think that's a very valid point. We are working often with people that have never received feedback that was given with good intent. And sometimes people feel like every bit of feedback is meant to be punitive, and it's not. It isn't. It's for correction so they do better. And sometimes feedback, they're already doing great. They just need to grow a little bit more. So that kind of gives us that opportunity. I would love to hear from everyone else too, and how they've seen that operationalized. And then if it's not received well, we can talk a little bit about how we've confronted that.
There's a few things that I try whenever I'm giving feedback. Since I teach Med Surg 1, I will talk to my peer who teaches Mother Baby. So she has the same group of students as I do. And I ask her, what has she noticed? But when I talk to my students, I had one student tell me, I feel like like you make me stupid when you talk to me. And I looked at her and I told her, that's not my goal. I see that you are, like you said, doing an amazing job with X, Y, and Z, but I see that there's this one thing that you can improve on. And I think, like you said, like this course requires for you to meet this standard for you to be successful on this level. And sometimes I have students who accept my feedback and they're just like, okay, like, especially I feel like for some reason athletes are sticking out in my mind. Like sometimes when I have athletes, they're excited for the challenge, they want to meet that challenge. And sometimes I have students where they may not accept the challenge or they may not understand what I'm saying to them. But then all the way at the end of the semester, maybe 2 weeks before our 14th end semester, they're like, oh, I get it now, Professor Fontaine. So sometimes I just have to be patient.
I like what you said is that you preface that with, you're doing this really great. I think that
Yes.
we've probably all learned in one of our educational endeavors or another about that sandwich approach. Here's what you're doing really good. Here's what would be beneficial to grow. Here's what, I've seen you do that's really good, that gives that message. And there's a lot of, I think, value in that. I don't ever want to give, here's what you've done good, and here's what I've seen you do good on the outer sides, like the buns, the sandwich or whatever, without them being genuine. I want to make
Right.
sure that they really are good things. And, folks, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging because sometimes you have a student that's either written a paper or done a presentation or has given some care that maybe it's all kind of a train wreck. But one of the things that I find that I do use in cases like that is, I so appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate your passion for this. And that doesn't mean that that student is always going to go the distance, but a lot of times they will. They just need to know where to go. And they really just are lost. So I appreciate that, of letting them know that the feedback is not meant to be punitive. And honestly, even when we have to give hard feedback, that's something we can reflect on. We never want to come from that vantage point of making it punitive because it makes us feel good. We should never be teaching if that is the way
But
that we approach something.
I'm just going to chime in though, but I do think that at times, there are faculty that look at feedback as being punitive, almost as though it's like you're reprimanding a child or something, and I think that comes back to respecting adult learners, that even if maybe they're acting like less than an adult, they are an adult learner, and because of that, that requires adult to adult interaction, and not treating your college students like children. Sometimes we will hear nurses, educators, or clinicians on the floor refer to their students as baby nurses or little ducklings or things like that, and they are not. They are not baby nurses. They are adults who will be nurses. It comes back to that power of verbiage and how we empower the learner to really take their control in their learning process. I love, Claudia, you're talking about that with just, it's not punitive. Feedback is, I ask students, I'm like, have you taken this course before? Well, no. Okay. Then this is an opportunity just to grow. This is a good thing. Feedback and growth is good. That's what we want.
It's all in the delivery. That's something
Mhm.
I've learned about myself over the years is, we talk about students need to bring their A game when they are in class. They need to be prepared and they need to have read ahead or done their activities so they come ready to engage in active learning. And I find that as a faculty member, and even when I was active as a leader, I have to bring my A or at least my A minus game to be prepared for those kinds of conversations. Sometimes when we say and do those things, they are done in haste because there's so much to do. And especially when we're on a clinical floor, there are so many students to have to see and juggle that the feedback that we're giving becomes rushed and therefore it feels less than what it's intended to be. Having that mindfulness of how I'm going to give that feedback makes a really big difference too. And there are times we have to give feedback that's very direct, but it doesn't have to be confrontational in the sense of it being punitive. Punitive kinds of things should only come when there is policy that backs that up. And it's
Mhm.
not us being punitive. It goes back to what the course or the program or the workspace has required that isn't being met rather than us doing that from that direction.
Another thing that I like to use, just like you mentioned with the sandwich, is I always like to tell them that I'm just proud of them for being there. The fact that they're on time, the fact that they have their uniform on, I think that that is amazing. I know they're making all these sacrifices with family, with work. So even if you're like, ooh, we're struggling in a lot of different areas, I think even that's something that we can use. Like, you know what? I see you trying. I see you coming asking questions. I know this is frustrating, but if you just give me a semester, we will work this out together.
It's the
Mhm.
little things sometimes. And, I think we all here would be in agreement that nursing school, nursing programs of any level are not easy. And I frankly am one of those people that got a bachelor's degree before I went back for my associate degree in nursing. I got my bachelor's degree in education. And I'll tell you, just quite frankly, I loved that degree. I had 4 great years. I really partied a whole lot and, still came out with my 3.9. I had to work for that 2.5 as an associate degree nursing student. It was a reality shock. And some days, all I could hope for, because I was working at the time too, was did I show up? Did I have all of my things with me that I needed to? And was I willing to learn? And that sure has given me a perspective for our students. The statistics that we look at with students right now, there are more students in nursing programs now than not that have other responsibilities at home, taking care of aging parents or young children or
Yes.
people that are living in their household that need their interaction. They are doing so much more than I ever did as a 4 year bachelor's degree in education student, where I just moved into a dorm and coasted. Our
Mhm.
students are different. So they've got a lot on them. And I think that is so important, Claudia, is just giving them the feedback. I'm glad you're here today because that might be the only time somebody has said that to them, not just in the day, but in the week or in the month or, sadly, longer. I'm glad you're here because that's a lot more than some people did. You came and you're ready.
Mhm.
That to me can diffuse a lot of what we see as incivility in nursing education and in nursing practice if we enter it with a heart that is different. Nursing is built within the heart. It's grounded in science and in the emotional intelligence that it takes to be able to provide excellent, compassionate, evidence-based care. But sometimes along the way, I think we have forgotten that heart to each other that means so much too as co-workers, as co-faculty, as Nicole, as you said earlier, kind of shepherding the students along the way side by side, not in front of them with ducks behind us, but side by side in helping them become the nurse that they wish to be. Because
Mhm.
I know we were not all equipped for that. It took some special people to walk along my side.
Mhm.
And so I want to be that person for someone else. And a lot of that incivility needs to go by the side. And part of that is the mindfulness of how I'm approaching each encounter.
There's a lot of other questions that are very, very similar to that. We mentioned athletes, but we can also use that opportunity for us to coach, and you provide the feedback, and then maybe the reflective question is, okay, what can we do differently next time? Or how can we improve next time? That type of thing. So always having that coaching mindset and bringing that back forward. I think that over time, students will trust that the feedback is given with good intent. And that is just to help them grow and to help them realize that we are truly on their side. So, you want to look at another question? It's a
Yeah,
whopper.
yeah, this is another whopper. We have faculty to faculty incivility, and I think that we would all be probably misplaced if we said we've never seen that. Like I said, if you are not one that has experienced it, you've seen it. And if you've not experienced it and you've not seen it, you might be it. I hope that's none of us. That's a good reflective thing for us to look at, but it's so true. When you look around, am I the problem? But we had a couple of questions I want to point out here. And one, I had to kind of laugh because again, there's one in every program. We can always say this. But what strategies do you suggest in handling coworkers who think they are right all the time? And there's always one, isn't there? Whether it's in a workplace or a nursing faculty body or anything like that, there's always one that thinks they're right all the time. And I dare say that often that is the person with the most experience, meaning longevity, not age, longevity in a program or something. And often I find that their behaviors are rooted in their fear of becoming obsolete or their fear of being irrelevant if people bring new things to the table that they're not bringing. It's often not rooted just in meanness. Unfortunately, sometimes it is, but often it is rooted, I think, in their fear of what it's going to mean for them if new things or new people or new processes displace them. So how do we handle that? One of the most tangible things I can say that I have had to do, and it's not always easy, but is look at myself. How would I feel if I were that person in that position? Because I came out of a program several years ago where I had spent 11 years there, and I did know that program inside and out, probably better than most people did, just because of the longevity there. And I wanted to feel appreciated for what I knew and for what I'd invested in what I hoped I had helped to build. Other people helped build it too, but you know what I mean? We all want to feel our part of that. But first, when I find that in a different setting, is I have to think, how would I feel about that? And the second thing I find is it's so important, I think, to acknowledge that person's experience. That doesn't mean against sucking up or anything like that. It has to be genuine. I appreciate your vantage point as somebody who has a deep history with this program. I appreciate what you can voice from having that voice of experience. I would love to be able to bring a different voice to that. Sometimes just setting the stage for that I'm not trying to displace you by giving my feedback can be helpful because it becomes a competition often in our minds or in someone else's mind if that openness hasn't been laid out. Unfortunately, we also have situations, which was another question that was on our list here, is even if we're not the person that's in the middle of one of those exchanges, how do I become an ally to both parties to be
Mm,
protective of everyone in the room? So it's easy to say, here's my strategy if I'm the one feeling, that there's incivility directed towards me, but what do I do? And we've all been there, right? We've
mhm,
all been in a meeting where it is really uncomfortable. And
mhm,
maybe or maybe not, we may not be the leader that can navigate that from a leadership perspective during that meeting. When I was a director of nursing, it's a little easier for me to navigate the conversation because I have that authority, so to speak, to do so in the moment. But what happens if it's more of just an informal group that's together? Or what if the leader is not navigating it? How do we, as one member of a faculty, see this exploding with people around us? How do we act as an ally? How do we help be part of the solution?
I'd like to speak just briefly on the incivility faculty to faculty. I've seen it live. I've refereed, played the referee in front of it. The delivery of the message, what I've seen and witnessed is with intent to criticize, intent to humiliate, instead of really intent to educate on the processes or how we do it or how we go about doing a particular project. I have, here's my concern, without the background of administration, i.e., the executive director, when the executive director fails to address the problems that are blatantly evident and witnessed and reported, this is where we lose ground. Are they trying to prevent, making somebody feel like they're choosing sides? I don't really know the answer, but as you said, Sherry, in your director of nursing role, you had the right with the title to address that. Well, I feel that as an executive director of a nursing program, you need to step in when the cause is there. And I've not seen that. That's concerning. That's concerning. Yeah. We're always going to have personalized that don't match, that don't connect. But the delivery of the message, how we view our own feelings, a lot of times, and I've seen it, some faculty are threatened by a senior faculty, or they feel like they're going to go in and take their position or move them out from their current position. And I don't understand the insecurity or why they're feeling that, because it's not really on the end of the senior member. It's the insecurity of that other person that's feeling that. So I think it's just impression, the delivery, and I think without the follow-up or the intervention from the director of nursing, I think without that, we're going to continue the backbiting, in my belief.
Yeah, I think it circles back almost to our very first discussion on incivility, where we kind of made a commitment, like all of us have a responsibility to address it and to call it out when we see it. But the questions keep coming on, how do I do that? One specific question was, how can faculty with very different opinions engage in frank, respectful, and civil discussions? One thing that we talk about all the time is that differing opinions are good, and conflict itself is not incivility, like not agreeing. Because if everybody is just like, oh yeah, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine, then you get groupthink, and then all of a sudden you've made a decision, and we're like, why'd we do this? Well, because nobody disagreed. But learning to actually role model appropriate dissent. Like Sherry and I don't agree on everything, but I can say, hey, that's fine with me. That's not a hill I'm going to die on. And I'm going to move forward with it, you know? So role modeling that process of where we have consensus, but not everybody may agree on everything. And I'm not sure where in nursing education that we got into this mindset that everybody has to agree on everything, because you don't. You know, you need a general consensus that is based on evidence, not opinion, to move forward. And that's the other piece that, Sherry, that first question that you posed on what do you do with people who think they're right all the time? I'll just say the actual question. Let's look at the evidence, because I don't care what Nicole thinks or what Sherry thinks. I care, what does the evidence tell us, and how can we use the evidence to better our students? Sometimes I think it comes back to the leadership to say, okay, we don't all have to agree on this, but the one thing we do agree on is that we want what's best for the students. We want what's best for the students, because I don't think that you'll find a nurse educator out there that doesn't really want what's best for the students. If they don't, then they're in the wrong spot, right?
You stated a really nice sentence there. We're here for the students. It's for the students.
Mm-hmm.
I think when somebody says that, it grounds us back and takes it from the personal attack or just personal feeling offended, to, oh, that's right, it is not about me. It is about the college, about the students and the outcomes.
So everybody take a note of what, Daniel just said right there, that sometimes in the heat of the moment, when people are arguing over things, that's a very specific phrase to come back to. Okay, we all agree that we're here for the students. Okay.
That
And
works also, I think, for those kinds of conflicts that there is not evidence necessarily that's going to solidify what we do. Because I know that I have found in so many discussions, it comes down to piddly things that people will die on hills about, that literally it is not about curriculum or evaluation. It's about who's teaching at 8 a.m. And
yeah.
there's really literally no evidence that, 8 a.m. is better than 10 a.m. or is worse, or finding that thing again about what is best for the students. Is it better that they are studying at this time because they've come off clinical at that time, et cetera, rather than what does it mean for me? That's kind of an all-purpose phrase that we can move back to.
I think one of the things that I found too, just to add on, because it is sometimes the piddly things, like you said, Sherry. It's not always you can go to evidence-based practice. Some of the experiences I've had as well with just introducing new curriculum, I've had it in the other instance that Daniel referred to, where you may have seasoned instructors that have been there for many years with newer instructors, more novice educators, but they come in with a lot of technology savvy and they use AI and they're able to navigate it to produce items that are very resources that are very helpful. But then we have the instructors that are scared of technology. With building curriculum, it's almost going back to that thing of being an agent of change. Because when you're a change agent, which is like I've gone through so many courses with this, but it's so true. I found that utilizing evidence-based practice to the group as a whole in order for them to be informed why we need to go this route and with data, because we are a data-driven discipline. But then also strong communication is going to be important. And then within that strong communication, I think it's important for us to make sure that those individuals that you start seeing pullback, right away when when it's not always incivility, but it's what we called uh feeling threatened.
Mm.
Where do I fit
Mhm.
in this picture? It's about communicating the necessity of the shifts, but it was also about offering the support and having empathy and realizing that this is going to be a hard thing. And so, really studying about being a change agent, it's not right away. You have to slowly roll out things and express to them that they're going to be supported. But I have seen it. You'll get a lot of sidebars in the hallway, and I don't understand why they're doing this. And it does start growing. But a lot of times, I do recognize that sometimes leadership will come to you and say, "Hey, this is what I need you to do," and then you're the one that, as the educator, that's stuck to rolling this out to your peers and your colleagues, and that's also uncomfortable too. So I do see both sides of it. Right now, when we look at where nurse education is going, everything is about interactive platforms for our students.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
still do have, I'm kind of in that middle with that Gen X. And
Mhm.
so I know enough, but I'm always learning. And then I have to go and find resources on how to catch up to them.
You
And
know, Sherry and I always use, well, not always, but we regularly use an analogy of a bus, a school bus with change. You have some people that are like driving the bus pedal to the metal, and then you got some people that are like, okay, I'm gonna sit in this seat and I'm gonna ride on this bus, but I'm not gonna drive it. And then you have people that are literally hanging onto the back bumper and they don't really want to be on the bus, and then sometimes there's people that are just sitting on the curb, they didn't get on at all. And so it's that whole, anytime there's change, that's kind of the process. And especially as we've moved into this AI, and knowing that our students have to be equipped to use AI tools in practice because they're going to be used. It's funny, all of these questions connect to each other so much because one of the very specific questions that was asked was, how do you deal with basically faculty that say, but we've done that before, or that's the way we've always done it? we can't do things the way we've always done them now because we've never had AI. Like we rubbed the genie and AI came out and there's no putting the genie back in. So that phrase of, well, this is the way we've always done it, it just doesn't work anymore. It never really did work, but it sure doesn't work now. That's you have some great points there on how to navigate that. And again, coming back as a leader or even as this one of the more senior faculty members and explaining that, hey, we can live on two continuums, being an expert nurse and being a novice educator. And we can grow along that continuum together. And one doesn't devalue the other. They are both really important. Sherry, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think everything starts at the heart of who we are as an individual and who we are as a nurse. Because, just because we move into nursing education doesn't mean we're not a nurse anymore. At the end of the day, we are still a registered nurse. We still adhere to legal accountability. We still adhere to the ANA Code of Ethics. And I want to be that nurse that, to the best of my ability, that exhibits those kinds of characteristics. Sometimes that is very challenging for us to reflect upon when we get into a heated moment, but I like being able to do that. I think in one of our earlier things, we said that every term, it's kind of nice at our first gathering to remind ourselves this is who we're going to be. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves. We're going to assume the best intention with each other and of ourselves. And as we all said earlier, and we're going to do what we do for the students in mind. We don't leave being a nurse behind. We bring that with us into our role as educators. And we need to model that with each other as much as we model that for the students.
Right.
So did we come up with a lot of answers? I don't know that we had a lot of answers. We had some tangible phrases that can be used over the last few times we've talked. We've had some ways of being that we've discussed. We know, and I think we all agree, that we need solid, committed leaders that are not afraid to confront challenges and that are willing to hold people accountable, but with a heart for their betterment, which therefore betters the program, which therefore betters the students, which therefore betters, hopefully, the patient outcomes. It's just a trickle. We've learned and we've talked about the need for change, and change has to come. It doesn't have to be done all at once, but it has to be done methodically. Thank you, Kurt Lewin, because we do need to unfreeze and deal with our feelings. We need to gradually move forward and then we need to refreeze. These are all types of things we can work on as we move forward. Now, I'm sure we're going to revisit incivility at some point in the future too, because again, it's not a one and done topic. We simply want to be able to explore other topics of interest as well. And as we move forward for one of our future topics, we are going to be talking about microaggression, because that's something that we see this in some literature, but are we seeing it in the context of nursing education? This is something we need to be able to confront too, as professional nurses and professional nurse educators, and how that we need to be able to strategize to eradicate that within our profession as well. So with that in mind, we are grateful to everyone that was here with us today. Thank you so much, because your interaction is what makes real talk real talk. And we look forward to the next time that we have together. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your investment in this series and in the topic that we've covered over the last few times. We look forward to moving forward now that we've had a chance to reflect.
I can't wait for the watch party for this one. It's going to be good.
It'll be good.
Thanks, friends, for being with us.